You ever wake up one morning thinking you're just living another quiet suburban life, then suddenly realize you're dead center in the kind of drama that makes those true crime podcasts look like bedtime stories? Yeah, that was me. You could say it all kicked off the moment Officer Martinez gave me that crisp little salute, right there in my driveway, when the HOA board froze, and Cordelia Ashworth, with her power haircut and $700 shoes, finally understood the $5,000 she fined me for my illegal treehouse was about to flip into a federal obstruction charge. You want irony? My so-called eyesore was actually a U.S. Marshal surveillance post, built to keep eyes on a witness whose testimony could bring down a trafficking ring spanning half the country. Cordelia just had no idea the games she was playing weren't HOA politics. They were about to become a headline. For weeks, Cordelia had been on this wild power trip, violation notices stuffed in my mailbox, fines racking up daily, threats on voicemail, you name it. She hated that treehouse with a passion, called it unauthorized, a neighborhood embarrassment. She rounded up her little army, organized petition drives, even hired rent-a-cops to document my crimes. Thing is, every move she made, every phone call, was being captured by surveillance gear tucked away in the very treehouse she wanted to tear down. The irony just kept piling up. I'm Thorne Blackwater. Well, around here they know me as Thomas Black, freelance tech guy. But truth is, I'm a U.S. Marshal, and for the past 8 years, I've run point on witness protection. The treehouse that made Cordelia lose her mind? It wasn't built for nostalgia. It was constructed by federal contractors, camouflaged as a childhood fantasy, rigged with bulletproof panels, cameras that could pick out a license plate 3 blocks away, radio gear that kept me in constant touch with the task force. If Cordelia thought she was dealing with some lone wolf homeowner, she was about to get a crash course in federal operations. The woman I was protecting, Elena Vasquez, lived just 3 houses down. She'd seen something she shouldn't have, something so big we'd moved her 4 times already. Tampa, Phoenix, some windswept town in Montana, and finally here, Willowbrook Heights, Pennsylvania. Every spot carefully chosen, every cover story airtight. But the people who wanted Elena silenced? They were relentless, found her twice, forced us to run in the middle of the night. This time was supposed to be different. I was the neighbor with a bad coffee habit and a mysterious tech job, nobody special. But my job was to see everything, and from my perch in that treehouse, I could watch every road into the neighborhood and every shady character who tried to get close. About 18 days into this gig, Cordelia put me in her crosshairs. I first clocked her rolling down Maple Ridge Drive in a spotless white BMW, license plate Rules 1, like she needed a name tag. She prowled the property, snapping photos, zeroing in on the treehouse with military precision. When she finally knocked on my door, she flashed that politician's smile, firm handshake, straight to the point. She handed over a manila folder so thick it could double as a doorstop, violation notices for days. Unauthorized construction. No architectural review. Non-conforming materials. She read them out like charges in a courtroom, every infraction carrying another $1,000 penalty. Her whole speech about community standards, property values, aesthetic harmony. I kept my poker face, nodded like I cared. She gave me 48 hours to start tearing it down or face more serious action, meaning the HOA would bring in contractors at my expense, no questions asked. After she left, I dug through every HOA rulebook I could find, cross-checking fine print. The documents were legit, but there were new amendments, likely slipped in after Cordelia took power. The timing was just too perfect. Elena had been in place less than 3 weeks. This wasn't about ugly tree houses. Somebody was probing us, maybe even working for Elena's hunters. So I called my supervisor, Deputy Marshal Crawford. He said, "Maintain your cover. Don't blow it." Elena's testimony was just weeks out. We had to ride this out. But you ever get that itch between your shoulder blades that says something's off? That night, I ran Cordelia's name through every database I could access. Turns out, for years ago, she moved here from Las Vegas, paid cash for her house, immediately ran for HOA president, forced out half a dozen families over minor violations. And every house sold under duress. Scooped up by Nevada shell companies connected to real estate investors. Her old address in Vegas? Raided by the FBI. Her husband, Raymond Ashworth, was awaiting trial for money laundering, tax evasion, the whole menu. And his construction company? front for the same trafficking ring Elena was set to testify against. It hit me like a freight train. Elena hadn't just been found by chance. Cordelia was hunting for her, using the HOA as cover. I shot that info to Crawford. He doubled security, tried to speed up Elena's court date. But taking down the treehouse? Not an option. Without it, Elena was a sitting duck. The next morning, my mailbox got tagged in red spray paint. Violator. Routine vandalism, cops said, but I wasn't buying it. 3 more violation notices arrived before noon. Mailbox maintenance, lawn height, exterior lighting. All certified mail, all adding up. Cordelia was building her paper trail, inching closer to forced compliance. That afternoon, a van parked across the street. 2 guys in khakis taking pictures, lingering way too long on the treehouse. Private security, building a case. That evening, I spotted a sedan watching Elena's place from up the block. When a patrol car rolled by, the sedan took off. Cordelia came back the next day with 2 men in polos, mandatory safety inspection. She had paperwork, all official, buried deep in the HOA rules, a clause letting them onto anyone's property for safety reasons. They poked at the treehouse, took pictures, used some gadget to measure electromagnetic emissions. Yeah, they were picking up the encrypted comms we used. The whole thing would be hilarious if it wasn't so close to blowing my cover. Later, I got a call from Harold Thornfield, the retired attorney on the HOA board. Said we needed to meet. We sat at some dusty coffee shop out of town. Harold laid it all out. Cordelia's tactics, her history of forcing out families, the sudden wealth among her board allies. He'd seen the pattern before, but this time, he said, she's moving fast. Someone's paying her to get rid of you. Harold handed over a stack of docs. Every violation notice issued since Cordelia became president. Property records showing houses sold for cheap, then flipped for profit. You're not her first target, but you might be her last. That was the break I needed. Suddenly, this wasn't just an HOA beef. It was a RICO-level scam, tied to money laundering and trafficking. A quick surveillance check showed the sedan watching Elena's place had Nevada plates, registered to a Vegas PI firm. Cordelia wasn't working alone. She was feeding info to her husband's network. Crawford gave the green light to escalate. The FBI stepped in, surveillance went into overdrive. My treehouse was now an official federal facility. A day later, Cordelia taped a cease and desist to my door. Remove the treehouse in 72 hours or the HOA would bring in contractors. Charge me up to $25,000. Timing was no coincidence. Elena's testimony had just been moved up. Cordelia knew. Then, a utility van with surveillance gear parked at the neighborhood entrance. Cops swept in, found 2 guys with Nevada warrants. It was getting real. Cordelia showed up next morning with 4 compliance specialists, all packing heat under their jackets. She announced they were here for immediate removal, claimed community safety. I told her I was consulting an attorney, but she wouldn't have it. That was my cue. I invited them inside, then called in loud enough for everyone to hear. Deputy Marshal Blackwater, badge 7492. Immediate assistance. Multiple suspects interfering with a federal surveillance operation. The reaction? Priceless. Cordelia went sheet white. Her guys started edging toward the door. She asked, "You're a federal agent?" I just nodded. And that treehouse is a surveillance post protecting a witness in your husband's trial. The sirens hit a minute later. FBI, local police, marshals, all coordinated for exactly this. Cordelia and her compliance team were arrested on the spot. Every move, every harassment, was now evidence of federal obstruction. Cordelia just stared at me, equal parts rage and respect, and muttered, "You played your role well, Marshal Blackwater. But this isn't over. Elena Vasquez will never be safe, no matter how many badges you have." Let me tell you, those words haunted me. Cordelia was only one head of this hydra. Her arrest triggered full-scale panic in the criminal network. The FBI went through her phone, emails, everything. We picked up chatter. Elena's hunters were coming for her, planning a direct assault on Willowbrook Heights, specifically targeting my treehouse, now the nerve center for the largest witness protection op in Marshal Service history. Undercover agents moved into empty houses, surveillance gear everywhere, local police on standby. But Harold, the old lawyer, showed up with another bombshell. 2 other board members had been pocketing Cordelia's money, rubber stamping her every move. Suddenly, this wasn't just about Elena. It was about blowing the lid off a criminal conspiracy that had its fingers deep in local government. The attack came just before Elena's testimony. 3 vehicles rolled in after midnight. SUV and 2 vans, Nevada plates. They weren't here to kidnap anyone. They set up an explosive device in the neighborhood center, planning to wipe out Elena and anyone near her. The feds moved fast, evacuated the block, bomb squad rolled in. Shootout erupted across front lawns and driveways. For 47 minutes, my treehouse became a war room. Agents relaying targets, taking down attackers in the dark. By dawn, 6 bad guys dead, 3 in cuffs, bomb neutralized, Elena safe. Thursday, she rolled out to Philly in a convoy like something out of a movie. In court, Elena delivered a gut punch of testimony. Names, dates, details on the trafficking network, how Raymond Ashworth laundered millions, even the officials who looked the other way. The evidence was overwhelming. Raymond went away for life. Cordelia got 18 years, more charges pending. But the fallout? Massive. Over 300 victims rescued. Dozens of corrupt officials, money launderers, busted. Willowbrook Heights bounced back. Harold Thornfield became HOA president, voided every bogus fine, set up transparency, even started a fund to help victims of HOA abuse. The families Cordelia drove out came back. Elena stayed, opened a little restaurant with her family's recipes, became the heart of the neighborhood. That old treehouse, my eyesore, got turned into a community watch station. The surveillance gear was swapped for bird feeders and a weather station. Sarah, the doctor Cordelia forced out, moved back and, weird twist of fate, she and I fell for each other. Got married right in the community center where it all went down. Congress passed the Blackwater-Vasquez Act. HOAs can't mess with federal operations, period. The story of Willowbrook Heights went national, used in federal training, taught in law schools. Proof that justice isn't just about the courts. It's about communities deciding enough is enough. And yeah, sometimes, the neighbor with the weird treehouse is exactly the wrong person to pick a fight with. Cordelia and Raymond are doing time. The trafficking ring is gone. And that little patch of suburbia? Stronger and more united than ever. So next time you see your HOA president getting a little too comfortable with their power, or a neighbor building something a little out of the ordinary, maybe think twice before you start writing those violation notices. Because you never really know what battles are being fought right under your nose, or who's willing to go the distance to see justice done. And that's why the treehouse still stands. Not just as a monument to one wild story, but as a reminder that sometimes, in the quietest corners of America, regular people decide to fight back and end up changing everything. So tell me, what would you have done? Would you have kept your cover, risked it all, or called the whole thing out from the start? Drop your thoughts below. I want to hear how you'd have handled it. Because if there's one thing I learned, it's that the line between justice and chaos can come down to one neighbor, one treehouse, and one moment when you decide enough is enough.